Well, everyone, the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus is easily one of the best phones that Samsung's ever made, but is it still worth buying in 2024? Let's go and break that down. I'll try my best to kind of break it down for all of you. Now, if you want to pick up some phones that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, this particular phone on the front has a 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display. Now, I was a big fan of this phone when it first came out. I still think it's still like a very beautiful phone, but one of the best features of this phone is that display. It was a 1440p panel and it was a 120Hz panel as well. The funniest thing is that since this device, we haven't really gotten another 1440p panel on our particular, Samsung Plus series until this year with the S24. So it was like so many years until we basically got another, another 1440p panel on our flagship, and that was basically what was going on there. Beyond that though, I still look at a phone like the S20 Plus and I still think this panel is very good. That dynamic AMOLED display is good. The only thing this panel is missing compared to what we have nowadays is maybe like the 2600 nits of brightness, but even beyond that, it's not that big of a deal, and I do think this is an excellent panel when it comes down to it. Probably one of the best features going on too, and it's a curved glass panel too, which is another just huge addition to it. Another big thing on the bottom, you are getting a USB Type-C port, which is amazing. Once again, I love having USB-C, I love having Samsung DeX, and it's a really cool thing that we're getting on this particular device, which again is a very, very cool thing. Another big thing going on for this phone is that you do have a microSD card slot. That's something that not a lot of phones have, and this particular phone does have it, which again is a very cool thing. I love having microSD card slots, and that's a very, very cool thing going on for this particular phone. So once again, I'm a massive fan of this particular device from that perspective, and I will tell you in a lot of different ways. Like if I'm going to go through and actually pick up a device, this is actually a device that I look at and I'm like super happy about, because that microSD card slot is a very, very cool thing going on here. So beyond that, those are some really cool things going on for this particular phone. On the backside, you have the standard glass back, which again is very cool. And you do get kind of like this triple camera setup. It's kind of like a triple camera, not really. It's like more like four, but not really. And it's a very interesting camera, which we'll talk about in a second. You have the standard glass back. You have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging as well. And overall, this is a phone that I look at and I'm very, very happy about. I think a device like the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus is such an interesting device for the most part, and I'm a massive fan of it. It's not a perfect phone by any means. There's a lot of other phones that are much better than this thing nowadays. But when I look at how old this phone is and for what it brought to the table, I'm actually very happy about this particular device, because it's such a good device in so many different ways. And it makes me so happy because it is such an excellent device, from that perspective. So take it as you will, but at least on the exterior, that kind of covers up, at least the outside of the S20 Plus. Now, in terms of the price tag strategy, this particular phone is also kind of interesting. So you are basically getting, it's not the most expensive phone in the market, but it isn't as cheap as you may think. And on eBay, it's, severely cheaper than this thing is on Amazon. But I will tell you in a lot of different ways, if you are currently purchasing a phone, the S20 Plus is going to be killing it in terms of the price tag. Like, it doesn't really get that much cheaper than this phone. And for the body standpoint, it is actually a fairly good price to pay for the body of this phone. Like, for having this type of display, for having this type of camera, this type of build quality, it is actually excellent, and that's something I actually like a lot about this particular phone. So once again, take it as you will, but that is another big asset for this type of device too, is its price tag. Now, camera wise, this is another interesting thing going on here. So like I said, kind of like a quadruple camera setup here. So you're getting that 12 megapixel wide, 64 megapixel telephoto, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 0.3 megapixel like depth camera. For a vast majority of people, the back camera of this thing isn't really going to be like that big of a difference here. It's not going to be that big of a change. And most people, it was a really good camera when it first came out, but compared to cameras nowadays, it isn't that great. But you're still getting a lot of good stuff with this particular camera. Like, you're getting that, 8K capability on the back of this phone, which this was technically the first, phone to bring 8K capability for their Samsung devices, which was a really, really cool thing. On top of that, you're basically getting that 4K at 60 on the front as well, which is a really cool thing as well. And there's still a lot of phones out there that have not brought that 8K capability. How crazy is that? That on this particular device, we're still getting a feature that most phones don't even have nowadays. Even like the reverse wireless charging, we don't even have that on iPhones, but we do have that. We have 8K on this particular device, which is a very cool thing. And that's something I love seeing on this particular device. So from that standpoint, that's a really big asset. But I will also say from a, kind of looking at the other side, when you do have something like the Galaxy S20 Plus, this phone isn't going to be the best in terms of like social media applications. So if you're looking at, social media apps, it's not going to be the best of all time, but it's still going to be a very good, camera quality for the most part. And that is something I like a lot about this particular device as well. So without a doubt, I will tell you the S20 Plus camera when it first came out was really good, and it still is a really good camera as well. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the software longevity, this is kind of the biggest problem I would say with the S20 Plus, is that this phone isn't necessarily still supported with software. This thing is only 1 year old though, like it just stopped at Android 13. We are going to be getting Android 15 this year, but I will tell you from that perspective too, you are going to be getting an overall better like software longevity and software experience on newer phones than this one. And that is kind of the problem that you're getting with this particular phone, is because although this phone can be great and everything and have, a really good price tag and still be good in a lot of different ways, it's not really getting software support anymore, which is my biggest gripe with this phone and is my biggest problem with it. But I will tell you in some other ways too, it's only 1 year old. Like it's not really like that insanely old where like if you go and buy this thing, you're going to be having like a severely outdated device. That's not really what's going on here. Like you're still getting a phone that's still supported, that's still going to be fine for a lot of people. And I think that's a really cool thing going on for this particular phone too. So although this phone isn't necessarily supported with software like completely 100% right now, it's still getting some security updates here and there. And this phone is still good for a lot of people as well. And I do think from that perspective, it's a very, very good phone that I recommend people to buy, even though it's, 1 year old with software. If you're planning on using a phone for like another like year or two, if you want to keep this phone for like 5 years, it's not going to happen. If you're going to keep this phone for like another like year and a half, I don't think it's like a terrible option, to be honest. In terms of performance, this one had that Snapdragon 865 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the thing I'll definitely tell you about this particular phone from that perspective is that it is actually a pretty good performing phone from the RAM, from the whole entire performance standpoint. In fact, almost every single Galaxy S Plus series, that's came out since then, you basically were essentially getting the same exact amount of RAM until the S24 Plus. So that was another pretty interesting thing going on here, because you were essentially getting basically the same performance on this type of phone as you were getting on some other devices too. So I will tell you the chipset is a little bit outdated now. You're definitely getting a much better chipset on some of the newer devices, as we have probably talked about before. But I will tell you with this type of device, it's a very, very good phone. I like this phone a lot from a lot of different ways, but the performance isn't the best, but it still is like not that terrible of a performing device when it comes down to it. So that right there also kind of covers it up there too. Now, in terms of the battery life, this thing had a 4500 mAh battery, pretty respectable. That's a good size battery to have inside of this device. And that's another cool thing going on for this particular phone too. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, I think, it was a very good phone when it first came out. And I would say for years after, this phone was still worth it. I don't know if this phone is like completely worth it from my standpoint. Like I think there are definitely better phones that you could buy, but I don't think this is a bad option. And if you're in the market, I would say go for it. But like I said, you might be better off if you purchase a device like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus or S22 Plus over this thing, but this is still a pretty good value per dollar. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.